All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this month's Direct Connect. Today we're talking about youth engagement steps to success, creating youth and friendly environments. My name is Madeline Zielinski, and I'm here presenting with my friend Jasmine. We're part of Youth Move National, and we're partnering with the National TA Network for Children's Behavioral Health to bring this webinar for you today. This is operated in coordination through the University of Maryland, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Youth Move National and who we are after we get started. So Jasmine is my other presenter today. I'll go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Boatwright. I am from Detroit, Michigan. I'm with Youth Move National as the Youth Project Coordinator. I have a host of experience coming from Detroit, Michigan. I have experience in being an advocate, liaison, community organizer, coordinator of Youth United, coordinator. I oversaw Youth Move Detroit as well as the director of Youth Move Michigan. So I come with a lot of system of care experience. Maddie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Great, thank you so much. My name is Madeline Zielinski. I'm calling you today from Indiana, where I spent 3 years as the state coordinator for Youth Move Indiana. This is our Systems of Care community, and we had several chapters across the state operating on the local and state level system of care, operating with a lot of different advisory boards and employing and helping to support volunteers. So we're going to talk about a lot of those things today, and so you'll hear me tap into some of those experiences I had when being employed as a young adult and then also employing young adults. So we would love to hear from you all, see who's in the audience today. So if you would like to please introduce yourself in the chat box, let us know your name, where you're calling us from, your title, and then our icebreaker for today is what insect or animal do you identify with? You can drop those in the chat box, and then Jasmine is going to read those out for us.
So we have Dawn Waddle, Miriam. I'm going to just do first names because that'll be easier. Ashley. Hi, Ashley. Mark. Dawn from Maitland, Florida. Cordy Brown. Oh, you guys are moving now. Dana, Jamal, Johanna, Kathy, Cheryl, Kristen, Alicia, Shayla, Rebecca. Wow, we have a full house today.
Awesome. Thank you folks so much. Feel free to keep introducing yourself in the box there. It's always awesome to see when there's other people that are also from your state. Cool, so while you guys are taking a chance to get to know each other and introduce yourself in the chat box, I can tell you all a little bit about us here at Youth Move National. So MOVE is an acronym that stands for Motivating Others Through Voices of Experience, and for those who are not familiar with Youth Move, we are a youth-driven, chapter-based organization. We work to help empower young adult voice by working with the young adults and also by working with people who work with young adults. We do one-on-one contact and coaching. We also do learning opportunities like this and are available to you all. If you need support with your organization, you can find out how to get support from us on our website, which is youthmovenational.org. And we'll give you that resource again at the end of this presentation. Also, at the end of our presentation today, you'll be asked to take a survey. So if you guys just want to hang online for just a second when you're done, you'll have a little survey pop up, and we'd love to hear back from you so that we could continue to improve.
Okay, a little bit about Direct Connect. Direct Connect is led by Youth Move National. This is a learning community. This learning community is a virtual forum for youth and young adults to develop professional skill sets via virtual training opportunities, connect as community to share and gather new resources, and unite with other youth advocates and professional peers from across the country. So pretty much we want this to be a place where individuals are able to develop professional skill sets, gain information, and bring it back to your communities, as well as connect with others who may have similar positions and, do some uniting and connecting with others who may have similar barriers. Okay, today our learning goals will be to identify basic key elements to engaging young people, learn techniques to best support youth employment in your own organization, and discuss barriers to enhancing youth space. Today our focuses are broken up into kind of two pillars. One will be around youth employment or general youth involvement, and then the other one will be kind of around youth employment. So when we're talking about general youth involvement, we're talking about roles of youth and young adults, language within the movement, environmental readiness, strategic planning, engagement, structure and accountability. And when we're thinking about employment, we're talking about a couple of other things like professional development, of course environmental readiness, promoting accountability, supporting self-care, and things to consider when employing young people.
So to get us started, we're going to talk about youth engagement. And before we dive into that, we want to talk a little bit about why do we engage and also how do we engage young adults. So one of the reasons that youth voice can be so valuable in this type of work is that it can bring you new ideas, it can give you better data, and I think most importantly, it increases the effectiveness of your outreach. So today we're going to go over some pointers to how you can bring all of those elements to your organization through Youth Voice. So we have a poll for everyone today. Before we go into some of these tips, we want to hear a little bit about your community. Answer there, and Jasmine is going to guide us through those.
Peer mentor, that's a common one. Youth engagement coordinator. Youth advisory council member, CPSW, peer engagement specialist, youth coordinator, youth partner,
Awesome. This is great. So it looks like there's a lot of young adult engagement that's already happening within your community. That's awesome.
okay.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone so much for sharing. And Jasmine, do you want to talk to us about the different roles of the young adults in the community?
Well, a lot of them were already mentioned within our poll, but of course, different youth roles include volunteer, advisor, liaison, youth peer support partner, street team or outreach member, board member, social media leader, facilitator or training, event coordinator or planner, engagement specialist, youth support specialist, and youth program coordinator or director. This continuum for roles for youth and young adults just kind of helps you identify ways to that youth are informed, consulted, involved, youth collaborate, and how youth are empowered. So some ways youth are informed are through media releases, feature stories, fairs and events. Youth are able to consult through youth surveys, focus groups, public meetings. Youth are involved in leading workshops and presentations. Youth are able to collaborate through advisory councils and advisory groups, support groups, family advisory councils. And youth empowerment really is when strategy groups youth are involved in strategy groups, steering committees, decision making, and hired in for staff roles or peer roles.
Awesome. And I'd just like to add to what Jasmine was saying that this is a spectrum that you can sort of work to move up when you're working with young adults in your community. Like you might see some things on here that you recognize are happening in your own community, such as having suggestion boxes, or maybe you do have a support group. Ideally, you would have young adults that were leading strategy groups or actually involved in the decision making and being hired into staff roles. So that's where we're reaching the empowerment. And then this red line at the bottom is something that you can think about to try to apply those things to your youth engagement. If you can increase trust and transparency, if you can increase peer support or cultural responsiveness, then those things are going to help you move up on that spectrum.
Thanks, Maddie.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine. So the next thing we're going to talk about today is language in the movement. So we actually do work with young adults to create definitions of terms that we use in the field. You may hear us use certain terms, and you might not know what they mean, but we actually do have, or you may hear us use terms often and not realize that there are actually specific meanings that are happening behind these. So this is the cover of our Language in the Movement. This is the compilation of terms, and this is available for download. A lot of people who are working in the field understand that there are terms that, as we learn more about as we continue our education in the field, we start to understand that our language can be made to be more efficient and more sensitive. So we have taken young adults and found ideal language that we use within our movement that involves, that can be really helpful. So I definitely recommend taking a look at these. This resource will be available. And the Institute is letting us know that these hyperlinks are live. So feel free to click on these, take a look at those, share this with people that you work with, and it can really help to improve your work. And again, if you have questions about any of this stuff, these are things that we help to create. So we're always here to answer questions for you. You can reach out to us anytime. So creating a youth-friendly space. This is a really important first step to bringing a young adult employee into a work environment, making sure that the space is prepared before they get there so that these staff can be treated as a leader. So this sometimes can be difficult for some staff because especially if it's someone who perhaps was being worked with and they view them sort of as a client in that role, that it can be difficult to adjust to working with someone on a team. So that's sort of why it's an important step to prepare the workplace before that young adult comes on. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We also have things to consider here. Make sure you're thinking about transportation barriers, sensory needs, and making sure that they're able to take breaks. We also have another tool here that can help you in your environment prepare for having young adult engagement. You can click on this list. This is our chapter readiness checklist and is a part of the Youth Move National preparation for becoming a chapter. If you or your organization was thinking about bringing a Youth Move chapter to your community, this would be a great place to start. You can take a look at this checklist. It can help to inform you where are we now and what can we do before we're ready to bring on that chapter. And again, these are available for download. So we have a lot of excellent engagement resources. This Guide to Youth Engagement is one of my personal favorites, the second one here. This was really helpful for me when I was a young adult leader. And I think one of the things that's so great about it, in my opinion, if you click it, you'll see right away that it's very brightly colored. There's a lot of graphics happening. There's a lot of different text, and that really helped me to sort of process the information as a young adult. And it also really is nice because it has sort of a workbook feel to it, which I think really helps to guide young adults in feeling like they're really taking ownership of what's happening. So this is a great guide to sort of help the if you have young adults engaged in your community, if it's just a few and you're trying to increase your impact, definitely take a look at this Guide to Youth Engagement. Get that printed out. It's a great thing to go over with a group. We also have this National Resources for Youth Engagement. This is another wonderful, lots of graphics, lots of colors. I definitely had these printed out in a binder when I was a young adult. It's full of lots of great tips that are relevant and applicable to the day-to-day work for these young adults. It's really easy to follow, simple language, so I definitely, these have this seal of approval for sure as far as being youth-friendly resources. So the next one we have listed here, this Youth Involvement in Systems of Care, A Guide to Empowerment. This is another one of my very personal favorite ones. It's not quite as colorful and interactive as the other ones, but it has a lot of wonderful, pertinent information for if you're getting started in systems of care. It has great information about who do we hire to be the youth coordinator, what does that youth coordinator role look like. I know that in my community there was some struggle about, what is a coordinator, what does a youth coordinator even do? And this offers some really great guidance to that. And it's specific to system of care. So that is one of my favorite guides. If you're working on systems of care, definitely recommend printing that out. I gave it to all of my chapter leaders. It was very helpful. So Johanna has a question for us. She says, would you recommend that you use these resources with youth members, youth staff, or both? So some of these are more specific for young adults, such as the Guide to Youth Engagement. This one is very much like a workbook for young adults, whereas some of the other ones would be helpful no matter who you are. I think that the Youth Involvement for Systems of Care has some more guidance into it for the supportive adults that are a part of the community, whereas the Guide to Youth Engagement is more of a workbook to help young adults guide themselves through a project or through systems of care or through recruitment and involvement. And then I would say about the last one as well, this the SAMHSA Administrators Youth Engagement Guide. This is going to be more aimed at the administration to help guide those staff. So thank you, Johanna. That's an excellent question.
Okay, strategic planning. One of the things, I love this quote, it says, all you need is a plan, the roadmap, and the courage to press on to your destination. A lot of times when we're doing youth work, we work with so many young people that have so many great ideas, and different things that they want to do, different projects. But it's important to engage young people in creating strategic plans and timelines and logic models, so that way it promotes accountability within the youth and adult partnership. A lot of times with timelines and different logic models, young people are able to see their big picture and are able to fight a little harder towards their end result. Of course, things to consider is allow room for ongoing coaching and support. And I think that's important, especially as an administrator or supervisor of a young person. You want to make sure that you leave a lot of room. Well, when I was a supervisor, I definitely wanted to have like an open door policy where our young people felt comfortable with coming to talk to me and doing, you know, maybe unscheduled check-ins. But even making sure that we have scheduled check-ins, ways to kind of reach out to the young people, see what's going on, what they may have difficulties in with completing is always helpful. And then making sure that if a young person messes up or if it's not completely where we want it to be, that we use those moments as coaching moments and not as always punitive punishments behind them. Youth employment. Why do we have young adults on the team? How do we support the team? How do we support them in a new environment? I don't know why I wanted to keep saying team. So why do we have young adults on the team? So some of these things I know are not, a lot of people are not new to. So change institutional culture and practices, can help design and implement new policies that better serve youth and young adults, can build awareness and understanding, can build self-efficiency, build sense of community, improve individual and organizational outcomes. One of the things that I feel is very important is a lot of times we know the why, but a lot of times we don't get to the how. How do we support them in a new environment? When we're dealing with young people, we know that we want to provide flexibility, and in my experience, this has been one of the most challenging parts because we want to hold young people accountable and make sure that they're ready for the workforce. However, we also have the issue of needing to meet young people where they are. And sometimes young people are in crisis or have different family issues at home or different school schedules that may require a little more flexibility. Encourage ongoing professional development and hands-on learning opportunities. I know for myself as a young person growing through the system of care, it was definitely helpful for me to be exposed to different, we had different grand rounds training series within our community. Maybe things that didn't always apply to me, but it was helpful for me to understand how our system operated. Be clear about expectations, processes, and deadlines. So again, having a work plan or some type of strategic plan where there's deadlines, timelines, having expectations, whether there's a job description or a group description of group norms. Again, providing, checking in regularly, helping connect with a mentor, and then allow room for error and use them as teaching moments, as I discussed earlier.
And Jasmine, we also had a question from the audience that was, what are logic models?
Okay, so this is so not my strong suit. Maddie, you can help me out with this. But logic models are pretty much documents that help you organize what your overarching goals are, what your objectives or action steps are to get to your overarching goals, and then kind of those steps in between. Am I explaining that right, Maddie?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Thanks for putting me on the spot. I have to freshen up on what logic models are. Great question. Okay, so our second poll question is, what are barriers that your organization face that keeps you from bringing young people on board? Oh, there is the rest of the question. I'm sorry. Let's try this again. What are barriers that your organization face that keeps you from bringing young adults on as employees? Finding funding. That is definitely a huge barrier. Administration doesn't understand the benefits. Insurance policies. Oh. I'm very interested in what the insurance policy one, like if you could tell me a little more about what that is about, maybe in the chat box. Recommend recovery, time for use, life story. Trust they may be responsible, scheduling. So some of the things that I had to do here locally in my community when around scheduling was we had to work with the different organizations, the different community and mental health organizations that had young people employed there to kind of shift their hours of work. A lot of them extended their hours. Instead of closing at 5, they closed at 7. That way to support young people having space to meet and doing some of that, youth work. Well, thank you. Continue to post your answers in the chat box, and we will continue to move forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Cool. So one thing that can help in bringing young adults on, and it really is essential, is creating policies around having young adults and supportive adults or the administration working together to create this policy. Another thing that is a really wonderful benefit of working on these together with a young adult is that it creates a rapport and a working relationship between the staff. So it sort of is like a first step to seeing what it's like to collaborate and empower a young adult, to have them working on the team, to listen to what they say, and then to give them a chance to see that you are going to take what they say and put that into practice in the form of creating that, taking their consideration into the policy. Looks like, Jasmine, we have a clarification for your insurance question. Alicia says you have to be 21 or older for the auto insurance to drive company vehicles. Oh, okay, I see what you mean by insurance. Does that help, Jasmine?
It does. That's exactly what I thought was one of the barriers, and it was definitely something that we encountered here in Wayne County, so that's exactly what I thought it was. Thank you, Alicia.
Great. Thank you so much. So some good policies to consider when you think, well, you know, what sort of things do you mean? Some of the things that come up are social media agreements, membership agreements for young adult volunteers. So these are two things that I definitely have personal experience in creating. It helps to have guidelines if you have young adults that are advocating and if they have social media pages. This would be an opportunity to gather with them and say, what sort of things does the group want to put out on social media? What sort of messages? What sort of things do we want? What sort of things do we not want? What sort of things are we not going to talk about? This is also a great opportunity to address cyberbullying. You can put in a portion about, that in Youth Move Indiana, we definitely had a portion about you won't bully anyone else and you won't respond to cyberbullying. And so that was also a way to take an issue that was really important to them and to work that in as well. Membership agreements can be a really great way to find collaboration between administrators and young adult advocates. So if there are some sort of concerns, these things can be put into a membership agreement so that those young adults that are participating as volunteers can understand that there is some sort of guideline. So if this all seems brand new, there are a lot of organizations that have these. Feel free to reach out to organizations in your community that have young adults working with them. You can always reach out to us as well. So we have some resources for you in this policy section. If you click on this link, it'll take you to a study that was done about youth engagement with an organization. There is a graph that I found particularly helpful on page 7 that sort of shows the flow of how their specific youth council helped to give their input and sort of what happened with that, what their process was. And then if you want to skim the findings, those are on pages 12 and 13. This one is my personal favorite policy guideline that I have found. This link here actually takes you to some operational guidelines that are from New Zealand. So these are developed by the Ministry of Social Development, which they really just call the ministry. And it's very, very thorough policies and procedures. Really just taking a look at the table of contents is impressive. What I really like about this resource is that it is like a state level operations policy. So it really breaks it down into all of the different areas that you might be concerned with for the different guidelines of having youth employment. So if you are somebody who does work in a similar administration, or if you're looking to see a breakdown of what does the end of this road sort of look like when we have young adults brought on, New Zealand is pretty far ahead of the game with having young adult peer supporters. So this is an amazing resource. I definitely recommend bookmarking it. It is a very large resource, as anyone who works with this sort of policy probably guessed. It is very thorough. So, so just a heads up that it is a pretty long, wordy document, but if you're looking for a resource, it is invaluable. So definitely take some time to check that out if you can. Another thing that is really crucial when you have young adults joining your team is to do professional development. A lot of times we're working with young adult advocates who have experience in the system, and so they have a lot of wonderful expertise, but they may not have particularly worked in this type of environment before. So it's great to get them as much professional development as possible. We have some really wonderful opportunities here for you. These are great places to find some professional development. We have an archive here of SAMHSA recordings. I'm not sure if that is what David is asking about an archive. We do have these, if we were talking about Direct Connect, we do have these recorded and put onto YouTube, so you can access those. SAMHSA also has a lot of wonderful resources here if you want to learn about supporting youth and young adults. There's an excellent toolkit here if you click on this Mind Tools toolkit. We also have the STAR Center. If you've never used anything from this technical assistance site, it's really excellent. So please take a look at those. And then, of course, you see here the Direct Connect National Learning Community. So that's where we are right now. We host these learning communities about every 2 months, and we try to focus on things that help youth leaders as well. So if you have young adults that are working in your community, if you're bringing them on, you can definitely recommend that they attend these resources or these recordings. You can check them out here. We also have live ones if they want to come and participate and learn live. It's a great way to learn about some things happening in the field. There's also a YouTube series here for youth voice and leadership professional development. So I like the YouTube series because they're easy to access and you can access them anytime. So this sort of helps with some of the things Jasmine was talking about earlier, making sure to be understanding of timelines, deadlines, helping young adults understand that they can work at their own pace and supporting them in that. And we're dropping those YouTube links in the chat box for you. So thank you very much, David, for your question. Awesome. So then here, okay, yeah, it looks like this link is working. So this is an organizational self-assessment. If you're thinking about bringing young adults on to your organization, this is a really great way to look at the organization and sort of do an inventory, right? So this is something that you can work on yourself or with your staff and go through. It looks like there are 20 questions, so it's pretty easy. And it sort of helps you to rank where your organization is on its readiness for bringing on a young adult, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And it also helps you, so it helps you to see where your strengths are and then areas that you could work on for improvement. It looks like there may or may not be an issue with Adobe, so the copy of the slides will be available for download in the file box below, and you'll have access to all the links mentioned there. So thank you very much for bringing that to our attention.
Oh, there is a problem with Adobe. Maddie, I'm not able to click to the next slide. Are you able to click to the next slide?
I am. We actually need to be on the accountability side. Great. So, so on this slide, we'll talk a little bit accountability. So this is accountability both for the young adults as well for the administration and the supervisors. So it helps to have accountability as the administration and the supervisors to make sure that you are modeling inclusiveness of the youth voice. If you're the person who is helping to supervise or mentor that young adult, if you are someone who is in charge or who's capable of having young adults join different boards or advisory councils, that you model that inclusiveness so that the rest of the staff can see how they can be inclusive of that youth voice as well. So
and
this
Maddie,
sort of
do you
means
mind if I jump in a little bit there?
Please, go ahead.
As a supervisor within an agency or organization previously, one of the things that we learned was our young people really wanted to feel included, and the small things count. So the agency picnics or the staff appreciation days, those were good times to invite our young people to kind of come and say thank you for their work as well. And over time, our young people really begin to value events like that. So I just wanted to bring to you guys' attention, don't forget the little areas where young people, sometimes we may not think about them because they're not necessarily employees of the organization, but they are working with us to enhance our programs or enhance the work that we're doing. And those are really great opportunities to engage them.
Yeah, and Jasmine, I know that you came from a place where you were able to employ young adults. Can you speak to any more about these accountability points?
Well, I think the biggest thing when we're talking about youth and accountability is being able to tailor accountability needs or support for each individual young person that you're working with, because a system that may work for one young person may not work for another. And so a lot of times we may have had, all of our team may have had reports due, but we may have other supports in place for certain team members who may needed additional support. Maybe that was coming in during my office open door policy hours, and I worked with young people individually on reporting so that until they were comfortable with reporting on their own. So different things, just making sure that you're being flexible, but you're also being very clear on what the expectation is for young people and what the end result should be.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So one thing that is often overlooked when we're dealing with young adults who are advocates especially, sometimes people can get so gung-ho about advocating and making a difference, and they just want to go out there and change the world, and we forget to take care of ourselves. And sometimes this can lead to burnout, as I'm sure that a lot of people who have done this work in the past know. So it's important to make sure to keep an eye on those young adults, and if you are a young adult, to keep an eye on yourself and make sure that, and really everyone, to make sure you're not burning the candle at both ends, as it were. So make sure that you're looking to take real steps to self-care. So one of the best ways to do this that I found was to establish and hold boundaries between your work and your personal life. There's a lot that happens in this work, especially when young adults are engaging other young adults, that there are some blurred lines between your work life and your personal life. And sometimes that leads to what feels like working all the time, 24 hours a day, and you never really clock out. So making sure to take an intentional effort to really clock out when you're done working to avoid overworking yourself. Another thing that is important when you're a young adult who is new to the field and coming on as an employee is to know that it's okay to say no to new tasks if you feel like you're overwhelmed with the tasks you already have on your plate. Sometimes we feel like we can't say no, and people will, but you learn pretty quickly that people will keep handing you things until you ask them to stop. So to make sure that you advocate for yourself and say, you know what, I have a lot on my plate right now. And then if you are feeling overwhelmed, to know that it's okay to ask for help, that we only have so much capacity, and we can increase that capacity when we reach out to others for help as well. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Jasmine?
No, Maddie, I think you covered that really well.
Great, thank you. So a little bit more about self-care. We're going to break it down for you a little bit. This is an image that maybe some of you are familiar with. This is the 8 dimensions of wellness as defined by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So we have them broken down into 8 sections. This includes the emotional, environmental, financial, intellectual, also occupational, physical, social, and spiritual. So there's a lot of different ways that we can take this information and actually apply it to our everyday lives and our everyday self-care plan. So I would definitely recommend doing whatever is the way that helps you the best. So some people I know will draw these circles onto a poster board, and they have little Post-it notes, and they put, what am I going to do for each of these different dimensions of wellness for myself. I had a friend who had a big flip chart that she drew a pie chart on, and then would fill in the pie chart when she had done something for herself that helped to support that dimension of wellness for the day, or to put goals in there. So if there's something visual that helps you to remember that these are things that that you need to help care for yourself to have that whole wellness, even if it's just printing it out, putting it up on your board, it can make a really big difference. And if you have young adults that are joining the team that aren't familiar with the 8 dimensions of wellness, I would definitely recommend introducing them to it. It can really change the way that you think about how you take care of yourself. It's not all self-care is just, watching Netflix and eating chocolates, as awesome as that is. And sometimes you really need it. There's a lot of different ways that we can care for ourselves. And so having these as sort of prompts and catalysts can help us.
And if you're an administrator or supervisor, maybe one of the things to look at is group wellness as well, and ways to encourage wellness within your group. A lot of times that could be, you may have a strategic planning retreat or strategic planning meeting where you may be able to spend 20 minutes of that time doing yoga or some type of exercise or just meditation. I know that has worked really well for me locally in working with different groups.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for adding that. Awesome. So we would love to open the chat box to you all. What sort of questions do you have for us today, myself or Jasmine, about any of the resources we went over, about youth engagement, policies, or bringing on young adults to the team? So feel free to drop those questions in the chat box, and we'll have Jasmine read those out for us. Also, just a reminder to stay on the line after our presentation ends to complete the survey. Looks like we have some people typing. We'll give them just a minute.
Okay, Taylor, can I get this sent to me via email? I'm sorry. The answer to that question is yes. I'm reading.
Yeah, no problem.
So can you talk about ways to engage youth who may be hesitant about mental health services while still providing informed consent about what we offer and meeting funder requirements for billing? Okay, can you?
Okay, I'm going to try to answer your question as I best understand it. So I think that in general there's a lot of distrust that happens with young adults who especially have lived experience in the youth serving systems or the mental health serving systems. So if you're looking to bring on young adults as advocates, then I think that what always helped me to talk to these young adults was to say that, if you're feeling negatively, that means that you feel like there's things that could be improved upon and changed, and that you have a lived experience. Sometimes young adults struggle with, I have these negative experiences, and so that sort of defines who I am. How could I ever be useful in this scenario because I have mental health issues or something, and so they view it as a negative. So what we do is we try to flip it around and stay strength-based, right, and be positive and say, yeah, you had this negative experience, and you see room for improvement, so let's bring you on to offer that information, to loan your expertise, and it can sort of reframe it for them. So I'm not positive if that's exactly what you're asking, but I've done my best to try to answer as I understand. So thank you so much. I think that's a really good question.
Another thing is we're able, like holding youth focus groups in your community might help you identify ways to better address them or to better address agency-specific needs. Susie, we have a ton of resources that we could send you if that will be helpful.
Great, thank you. And do you have any specific resources about how youth peers should talk about boundaries with youth? So I know that we do have that youth service provider operational guidelines, the ones from New Zealand. They have sort of state language about the barriers, about boundaries, not barriers, but boundaries between those youth providers and the young adults. So that might be something to check out if you're looking for sort of like policy guidelines. And if you're looking for something more of like a one-pager, youth-friendly kind of thing, then I do believe that we do have something in our resources folder. I don't know that I could tell you right now off the top of my head what it was, but feel free to reach out to us at Youth Move National, and we can find something for you. Excellent. Thank you, guys. These are some awesome questions.
Okay, sorry, I was responding.
No, you're doing great. I think that we've got, can you talk about ways to engage? Oh, yeah, we got that one. Cool. Thank you that we answered those questions. You guys have some excellent questions for us. So we will be sending out some information. This webinar is available. The recording is available. We also have all of these documents are available to download. We have, oh, pardon me. And again, please don't forget to take the survey. If you're listening to this on YouTube, the survey is available in the description box as well. Again, if you have any follow-up questions for Jasmine or myself, you can always reach out to us or anyone at Youth Move National by visiting youthmovenational.org. Our information is on there, so reach out to us anytime if you need any support at all. So we've got these resources.